The Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring. Book 2. Frodo awoke in a bed with Gandalf watching over him. They talk of their time apart, and Frodo learns that if he had succumbed to the shard of the evil blade, he would have become a wraith like one of the 9 riders, and that he was very lucky to have made it when he did. The hobbits gather together again and celebrate their good fortune to arrive safely in the last homely house of Rivendell. They gather together along with the elf lords, and other important people for a feast. Frodo talks fondly to a dwarf named Gloin who had gone on the adventure to the Lonely Mountain along with Bilbo. After the feast, Frodo learns that Bilbo is still alive and well. They talk long, and Bilbo recites a song of his own making that the elves enjoy. The next morning there is to be a council. Many important people meet. They speak at length about news of the world and how the shadow of Mordor has grown longer. Elrond tells the story of the rings of power and the one ring to rule them all. Frodo learns that Strider is actually Aragorn and is the heir of Isildur. Bilbo and Frodo tell of how the ring came into their hands, and Gandalf confirms that the ring Frodo carries is the One Ring. Gandalf goes on to tell of how Saruman the White, the leader of Gandalf's order, has betrayed them. The council tries to decide what they should do with the ring, but the only good option is to destroy it, and it must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom from whence it was made. The ring will corrupt anyone who tries to wield it, and only those who do not seek power can carry it to its doom. Bilbo volunteers since he has carried it before, but Gandalf refuses him, for Bilbo is too old. Frodo hesitates because he had hoped his journey would be at an end, but in the end volunteers. Sam immediately volunteers as well, and Merry and Pippin insist on going as well. 5 other members are decided to go, including Gandalf and Aragorn. The elf Legolas, who represents the elves. Gimli, son of Gloin, who represents the dwarves, and Boromir, son of Denethor, who represents Gondor and the race of men. Thus, the Fellowship of the Ring is formed. The Fellowship waits until winter has passed before heading out on their perilous journey. The sword that was broken is forged anew, and Aragorn gives it the name Andúril. Bilbo gives Frodo the sword Sting and his mithril shirt. They head south once their journey begins. They stay west of the Misty Mountains as long as possible to remain hidden from the shadow of the mountain. Due to a flock of birds that Aragorn believes are spies, the Fellowship realizes that all paths are being watched. They decide to take the Redhorn Pass over the Misty Mountains, however the weather is bad and the mountain Caradhras seems to fight them. After the terrible storm is past, the snow is extremely deep. Boromir and Aragorn must forge a path back in order to escape. The mountain had defeated them. Only one other path is viable, and that leads through the mines of Moria. Finding the gates into Moria proves harder than expected. When they finally do find their way, Bill the pony must be left behind. Sam is very distraught that he must leave Bill behind, but he knows the pony cannot endure the long dark. When they arrive at the gates of Moria, they are locked. Gandalf does not know the password, but eventually figures out that he must speak the word friend in Elvish. Before they can enter, Frodo is seized by a great tentacle monster that comes from the lake at the foot of the door. After rescuing Frodo, the Fellowship escapes into Moria, and the tentacles destroy the door behind them, collapsing the entrance. There is no choice but to keep going forward. Sam mourns the loss of Bill, believing that the great tentacle monster has seized the pony. The Fellowship heads deeper into the mines that are a labyrinth. Only Gandalf knows the way, but it has been long since he has passed through the mines of Moria. In the dark, Frodo hears the pattering of feet following them. They find a place to rest next to a very deep well. Pippin throws a rock in to see how deep it is, which angers Gandalf greatly. After finding a great hall, they find a record of Gimli's cousin Durin and their last days in Moria. It seemed that the dwarves had all died down in the dark. Before they can leave, they hear drums in the deep. The enemy is coming. Trolls and orcs try to force their way into the chamber, but the troll is forced back. A great orc chieftain breaks through and stabs Frodo before the orc can be slain. The Fellowship believes Frodo to be dead, but he has survived because of the mithril shirt. The company flees the chamber and goes on ahead while Gandalf confronts the enemy, but the enemy is a match for Gandalf. The Fellowship continues to flee and comes to a chasm with a narrow bridge that only one at a time can cross. Behind them an ancient evil follows. A Balrog. Gandalf orders the Fellowship to flee and stands on the bridge to face the Balrog. Gandalf proclaims, "You cannot pass," and breaks the bridge underneath of the Balrog's feet. The Balrog lashes out with its whip and pulls Gandalf into the chasm. The rest of the Fellowship flee into the daylight where the dark creatures cannot follow. The Fellowship mourns the loss of Gandalf, but they cannot sit for long. They must push forward to Lothlorien. They meet the elves of Lothlorien, and they give the Fellowship aid, despite not trusting Gimli the dwarf. The elves agree to allow the Fellowship into Lothlorien but only if Gimli is blindfolded. Gimli takes offense at this, and the company agrees that all should be blindfolded instead of just the dwarf. The Fellowship finally arrives in Lothlorien, and their blindfolds are removed. They are brought before the Lord and Lady of Lothlorien, Celeborn and Galadriel. They are bid to stay and the Fellowship rests for some time in Lothlorien. Sam is curious about elven magic. Just then Galadriel comes and offers to show him elven magic. She brings them to a pool where they are shown distressing visions and Frodo sees the Eye of Sauron for the first time. Galadriel tells Frodo that all the hope of the elves lies with him, but if he succeeds the elves will diminish and be no more. Frodo offers the ring to Galadriel, and she is greatly tempted but in the end refuses because she knows that it must be destroyed and not used. Their time with the elves must come to an end and Celeborn offers them boats to make their journey easier. The elves give the Fellowship many supplies including cloaks and fine rope that Sam admires. Galadriel gives a gift to each of the company though she had not prepared a gift for Gimli the dwarf. Instead she asked him what he desires and he requests one single strand of her hair for it is more precious to him than gold. Galadriel fulfills his request and instead of one strand of hair she gives 3. To Frodo she grants a small phial filled with light. At last, the company leaves on the boats to float down the silver lode. On the way down the river Sam sees a log with eyes and discusses it with Frodo. They believe that it is Gollum following them. After discussing it with Aragorn they find that he has known about Gollum since the Mines of Moria. They come to the rapids and know that they must stop. At this time orc arrows fire at the Fellowship and they land on the opposite bank. A great black shadow looms in the darkness and Legolas takes a shot that hits its mark, and the winged thing falls from the sky. Aragorn and Boromir argue over what path they should take, and, in the end, they go with Aragorn's plan and haul their boats overland to bypass the rapids. They put their boats back in the water and ride some rapids before coming upon the sentinels of Numenor and pass between. Aragorn leads the Fellowship to the western side of the river to camp. Aragorn is uneasy in the night and has Frodo draw Sting which glows faintly. There are orcs nearby, possibly on the eastern side of the river. Aragorn asks Frodo to make a decision on where they should go, since he is the ring-bearer. Frodo has a hard time making a decision and decides to go off alone to think on his decision. After a time, Boromir appears to give Frodo counsel, but Frodo does not trust Boromir's counsel. Boromir demands the ring and even tries to take it by force. Frodo slips the ring on to disappear and escape Boromir. Boromir immediately regrets his anger, but Frodo is already gone. Frodo climbs to the top of a Moonhen with the ring still on and sees the world covered in shadow and the darkness of Mordor. Then Frodo is seen by the Eye of Sauron. Frodo quickly pulls the ring off. Frodo comes to the conclusion that it is too dangerous to keep the ring with the Fellowship and decides that he must go on alone. The rest of the Fellowship is discussing Frodo's possible decision when they realize Boromir is gone, and when Boromir returns, they realize that Frodo has probably gone off by himself. They quickly begin to search for him. As they split up and look, Sam is the only one to realize that Frodo must use one of the boats to go to the eastern shore of the river where Frodo is likely to be going. Sam finds a boat seemingly launching itself, and he quickly runs out into the water and nearly drowns before Frodo can pull him up and help him. Frodo had meant to go on alone, but he is actually happy to have Sam along. The two hobbits launch the boat again and are soon across to the eastern side of the river, where they head on the long road to Mordor.